Hi, everybody. I have another word to speak today, but first I want to let you know that Bassem, our friend from Yemen, who recently was reunited with his wife and daughter, thanks be to God, but he let us know that Yemen is being ravaged by COVID. Nearly every person Bassem speaks with in Yemen either has COVID or is recovering or has recovered from it. And so we offer special prayers today for the people of Yemen. The sermon you heard earlier was recorded on Tuesday. Such is this new reality of pre-recorded worship. It wasn't until later that I learned of George Floyd's murder beneath the knee of a Minneapolis police officer. In response to my note in the newsletter that the sermon for Sunday was recorded before I learned of the events in Minneapolis, I got an email from a congregant who said, "I think the situation is critical enough that we need a faith perspective on Sunday." That person was right. It's Saturday now. I've been thinking nonstop about what to say. Because I preached against anti-Muslim sentiment after 9/11. I preached racial justice after Katrina. I was on sabbatical when Michael Brown was killed by police in Ferguson and the city erupted in protests. The first sermon I preached on Michael's death when I returned from sabbatical was met with resistance. I preached racial justice again after the mass shooting at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. I preached again after Charlottesville. I've preached and preached and preached, but nothing is changing. In fact, it's getting worse. A student I taught at Candler back in the 90s, she was from the Caribbean. She had an interesting response when I mentioned something about God is still speaking. She said, "No, God is not still speaking. God spoke and spoke and spoke, and we did not listen. God is not still speaking because we do not respond. God has given up on us." Her words brought me up short. Now, her sister had just died a tragic death, and so I'm sure that event, shaped her response. But after I thought about it, I kind of get what she's saying. I mean, why keep speaking if my words, the words of preachers everywhere, the word of God, why keep speaking if nothing changes and gets worse? I do understand the need to hear from leaders. The current leadership vacuum in our country has all of us craving guidance, comfort, empathy. But do I really need to say that what happened last Monday was evil? Do I have to say that the cruelty of those 4 officers was not of God? Do I have to say that that event on Monday laid bare the deep roots of systemic racism in our country? Do I have to say that the protests around the country make sense to me? Do I have to say that when your country dehumanizes you again and again and again with lower wages, unequal health care, and disproportionate mistreatment by law enforcement, that you might not trust the justice system to assist you in finding restitution for wrongs committed against you? Do I really have to say these things? I mean, aren't these things we already know? Don't we already believe that all human beings are created in the image of God? Don't we already understand that all of us participate and contribute to our social systems, assigning more value to lighter-skinned people than to brown and black-skinned people? Don't we understand that we have to say Black Lives Matter? Because all the evidence screams to us that Black lives don't matter. I appreciated the congregants' email on Friday, the one that said, I think the situation is critical enough that we need to hear a faith perspective this Sunday. And yet, that email demonstrates, in part, exactly why we're in the mess we're in terms of systemic racial injustice. Because what happened on Monday in Minneapolis did not happen in a vacuum. The situation regarding racial injustice is always critical. But we only seem to talk about it when horrific images appear on our computer screens. So the computer ran out of energy, which is why the light went off at just that moment. Seemed an appropriate moment. So I'm going to go back to that same sentence. The situation regarding racial injustice is always critical. But we only seem to talk about it when horrific images appear on our computer screens. Do we not see systemic racism in the world around us? If not, we need to learn how to see it. If we took our faith commitment to work for racial justice seriously, I would get an email every week, not just when we watch a man murdered on our computer screens. If we took our faith commitment to work for racial justice seriously, our members would be working for it actively. If we took our faith commitment to work for racial justice seriously, those of us who are white would be doing the hard work of opening our eyes to our own participation in white supremacy. If we really want to follow Jesus in dismantling racism, we've got to stop twiddling our thumbs and do something. I know the heart of people in the FCUCC community. I know of our strong commitment to justice. I know of our commitment to working for racial justice. I know we're all horrified by things that are happening and things being said in our country right now. I know we want to do more to work for racial justice. I just don't see, and this is an observation, it's not a judgment, but I just don't see that we're doing a whole lot. And please note that when I say we, I am including myself in that. I'm not doing my part to change the system that devalues Black lives either. So where do we go from here? That's the title of the last collection of essays written by Martin Luther King Jr., and I highly recommend it. So, Alan and I are moving to a new home this week, and so I'm taking this week off so that I can focus on that. I'll be back in the saddle next Sunday, June 7th. Between now and then, I challenge all of us to come up with a plan for individuals and for our FCUCC community to work for racial justice in our country, in Asheville, and our neighborhoods. Actions that will help dismantle the systemic racism that oppresses so many. I invite you to send your ideas to me at pastor@ashevilleucc.org. That's pastor@uccasheville.org. Now understand that because I'm on vacation next week, I am not going to be checking my email. I'll start looking at your responses on Monday, June 8th. You can send them while you're thinking about them, but I won't read them until June 8th and after. So once I hear from you and read your responses, we'll talk again and see what we might do. Our theme this summer is rebirthing the church. In our own country, the church often has spearheaded racist policies and practices. Please, please read the book Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. And I will tell you, I'm still making my way through it. It's a thick book, but it explains so much about how we are where we are now in terms of racism in our country. Part of rebirthing the church must include working as followers of Jesus to dismantle racism. If the new church we are birthing does not work to dismantle racism, I fear we'll be midwifing a stillbirth. Two sermons on a single Sunday. It's a lot, I know. But really, it's just one sermon with two parts. Because how we respond to what's happening in Minneapolis and across the country, it goes to the heart of who we are as followers of Jesus. Who are we as people of faith? What does our faith compel us to do when we see a black-bodied man die beneath a white police officer's knee on TV? How can we bring to life a church that calls racism what it is? Sin. How can we bring to life a church that acts our world into well-being with strength and courage and wisdom and compassion? That's the question. I look forward to reading your responses. In the name of our God, who creates us, redeems us, sustains us, and hopes for our wholeness. Amen.